The American Civil War 1861 to 1865 was a domestic conflict that had international ramifications. Most historical discussions focus on the roles of Britain, France, and other European powers, but a less commonly asked question is, could Mexico have entered the Civil War? At first glance, it may seem unlikely, but Mexico's geographical proximity, political instability, and involvement with both the Union and European powers during the war years raise fascinating possibilities. This article explores the historical context, motivations, and barriers to Mexican involvement in the Civil War, and whether Mexico might have played a more active role on either side. 1. Mexico in the 1860s, a nation in turmoil. Before examining possible involvement in the American Civil War, it's important to understand Mexico's internal situation during that period. The Reform War 1857 to 1861. From 1857 to 1861, Mexico was engulfed in its own civil conflict known as the Reform War. This war was fought between liberals who supported constitutional reforms and secularism, conservatives who favored traditional Catholic and aristocratic power structures. The war devastated the country and left it politically and economically weakened. By 1861, the liberal leader Benito Juárez emerged victorious, but his government inherited a bankrupt state, foreign debt and French invasion. Juárez suspended payments on Mexico's foreign debts in 1861, triggering military reactions from France, Britain, and Spain. Though Britain and Spain negotiated and withdrew, France, under Napoleon III, used the opportunity to pursue imperial ambitions. In 1862, during the height of the American Civil War, French forces invaded Mexico. This resulted in the establishment of the short-lived Second Mexican Empire under Emperor Maximilian I, backed by French troops. So, during most of the American Civil War, Mexico was either recovering from civil war or fighting foreign occupation, which drastically limited its ability to intervene north of the border. 2. Geographic and strategic importance. Despite its internal chaos, Mexico's geographic position made it a key strategic concern for both the Union and the Confederacy. Confederate hopes. The Confederate states hoped that Mexico could serve as a source of trade and military support, especially once the Union blockade of southern ports took effect. Some Confederate agents tried to negotiate with conservative Mexican factions, hoping to establish ports or overland supply routes through northern Mexico, e.g., Tamaulipas and Sonora. But those hopes largely failed for several reasons. The Juárez government remained hostile to slavery and suspicious of Confederate overtures. The instability in Mexico made long-term alliances unreliable. France's growing presence in Mexico meant Napoleon III, not Mexican leaders, would dictate policy. Union concerns. For the Union, Mexico's situation was troubling. The French occupation posed a potential threat to the Monroe Doctrine, which opposed European colonization in the Americas. Though the Union could not afford a war with France during the Civil War, Abraham Lincoln and Secretary of State William Seward were deeply concerned about French ambitions in Mexico. The Union discreetly supported Juárez's Republican government, supplying limited arms and moral backing. After the Civil War ended in 1865, the U.S. applied diplomatic pressure and sent troops to the Texas-Mexico border, helping drive out the French and restore the Mexican Republic. 3. Could Mexico have sided with the Confederacy? While the Confederacy may have entertained hopes of Mexican support, the reality was far from promising. Ideological differences. Benito Juárez and his liberal government strongly opposed slavery, making an alliance with the Confederacy ideologically impossible. Even conservative factions in Mexico, though more aligned with aristocratic traditions, had no interest in formalizing ties with a slaveholding republic that might threaten Mexican sovereignty. French interest. Napoleon III had his own complex views. He was sympathetic to the Confederacy, not because he supported slavery, but because he wanted a divided America, which would reduce U.S. power and make French influence in Mexico more secure. If Mexico had been fully under French control during the war, it's possible that France could have allowed Confederate ships to dock in Mexican ports like Veracruz, or supported limited cooperation. However, even Napoleon was hesitant to provoke a direct war with the Union without Britain joining in, which never happened. 4. Could Mexico have sided with the Union? While full military cooperation was unlikely due to Mexico's own struggles, Mexico's sympathies largely lay with the Union. Shared Republican ideals. Juárez's government was inspired by liberal republicanism, not unlike that of Lincoln's Union. Both opposed monarchism, aristocracy, and slavery. These ideological commonalities created mutual respect between Juárez and Lincoln, though their direct communication was limited. Arms and support. Although the Union was cautious about getting involved in Mexico's internal affairs during the Civil War, they did allow weapons to cross the border to support Juárez's government, particularly after the war. Mexican revolutionaries sometimes bought surplus U.S. weapons and even hired American volunteers. There was never an official alliance, but there was quiet collaboration, particularly in resisting French imperial ambitions in the Americas. 5. After the Civil War, U.S.-Mexico relations. Once the Civil War ended in 1865, the United States turned its attention back to enforcing the Monroe Doctrine. The U.S. demanded that France withdraw its troops from Mexico, which it did by 1866. The U.S. moved Union troops to the Mexican border and sent political signals that they would support Juárez. In 1867, Juárez's forces captured and executed Maximilian, ending the French-backed empire and restoring the Mexican Republic. This episode marked a rare moment of Mexican and American alignment, driven not by formal alliance but by shared interests and enemies.